Welcome to Ask an Architect. I'm in Mathis, and today I'm here with Nasario Argine. How are you today, Nasario?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Happy to
Yeah,
be
we're happy to
talking to
have
the
you.
NAS.
Awesome. We're glad to have you here. And so we'll just start off with a few things about your personal life. If you could just tell us a bit about your educational background and what made you decide to pursue a career in architecture.
So I did my undergraduate studies at Texas A&M University in College Station, and then I pursued my master's degree, I guess back in my hometown of San Antonio at UTSA. And I guess what really got me into architecture was the kind of design aspect of it and being able to be creative while still having some control as to how things are built. And it's a really interesting field, and it's kind of one of those things that you become a jack of all trades. And that always kind of drew me to the profession. I really got my start in high school. We were fortunate enough that our home high school had a magnet program where they introduced us to a lot of the architecture software and engineering software. And so we used a lot of CAD and a lot of Revit. That program being the Engineering Technologies Academy in my home high school of Roosevelt High School here in San Antonio. And so that was a really good exposure to the profession and kind of getting me involved in architecture.
Awesome. So the love for it kind of started bubbling up in high school then.
Yeah, maybe a little bit before that because I did express interest to the advisors in my high school as to me wanting to do architecture. And that's kind of where it was like, oh, well, we offer these classes if you want to take them. And I was like, oh, that's super sweet that we can, pretty good deal. Um, and so that's kind of what led me into it. So it was maybe middle school, I would say, is kind of when I started being interested. But I will say, like, I didn't, at that point in time, like, I didn't really know a whole lot about the profession. And so it was good finding out slowly um, what I was going to be actually doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Okay. So now that that journey of figuring out, okay, I like this thing, I can do this professionally in this way, it is architecture. Um, what do you specialize in now? Like through that journey, what else did you learn that you liked? And what projects do you work on today?
So I work with VLK Architects in their San Antonio, Texas office, and we primarily specialize in K through 12. At least that's what I work on currently. Um, and one of the things that is kind of my favorite things on a day-to-day basis, just the fulfillment that you get from watching the end users experience a space that you've designed, watching them walk through it, and especially in the K through 12 market, it's a lot of children and teachers and spaces that people are in constantly, and seeing them enjoy themselves in that space. I don't think we realize how long we spend in our work environments. So for the teachers, making a really nice work environment where they probably spend 70 to 80% of their lives in these spaces.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I love that create with them in mind. Do you ever have the chance to speak with anybody, like any of the teachers, any of the students or administration before you go into a space, before you start to design a space?
Yeah, we really don't start the design process without getting the teachers and the people that are going to be in the spaces involved. So we have what we call a launch process, and it's very similar to charrette, where we meet with teachers and principals and people of leadership for the school district, where we kind of with them design the school. And really, it's their design at the end of the day. And so the teachers and educators are able to have a very powerful impact on the spaces that they're going to be occupying on a day-to-day basis.
That's awesome. I'm curious, how does the path that you've chosen working in K through 12, how does that define your architectural approach? How do you go into projects? How do you start these conversations with the administration?
I think it makes me a better listener to, be able to take what these educators and administrators want and turn that into a building. Uh, Sometimes they more or less just need help on translating their thoughts into becoming a actually built environment. They are like, well, I kind of want this next to that, and I would like this. Can you guys do this? And we're like, yeah, sure. Or if maybe we've never done it, but we can definitely find an innovative solution to give them what they want.
So do you find that listening is, excuse me, maybe the greatest characteristic an architect could have? Or what would you say the greatest characteristics an architect could have in order to make it in the K through 12 space?
Yeah, I do think listening is a big part of being a K through 12 architect. However, I think that translates into any market sector. In any architecture field, you are listening to the client, and the client should drive that conversation. And you should be designing for the client's needs and not just because something looks cool. Um, and I don't think very many people do that, but sometimes that is kind of the from the outside looking in, people think that that the architects are kind of the ones that kind of create the design, but in reality, we're kind of just like a driver, and definitely the client is a passenger, and we just kind of get them to where they want to be with regards to their design or their building.
Understand? So you kind of guide them. You take what they say and then you guide them based on what you can do as an architect. Is that
Yeah,
what I'm getting?
yeah. But like I said, that's not just in K through 12. That's I think in any architecture field.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you? What are some of the more or other important characteristics you think an architect could have in order to be successful in other areas?
Here lately, I'm finding that being a teacher is a really big, important thing of being an architect. I'm recently licensed, and I'm kind of finding myself step into a role, like a more leadership role in projects. And, I'm having to lead the charge on these projects. And then I'm also having to teach the newer staff kind of the things that I've learned over the last couple of years. And I've realized, man, it's something that I didn't realize I was going to have to be doing. I feel like a lot of architects, maybe you don't realize how much teaching you're going to be doing and how important it is to be able to communicate not only to clients, but also to your staff and mentoring them and fostering those relationships with your staff and your team in order to create a better team, create trust within the team, build your team up. We all grow together as a team. So if they're learning, I'm learning, and we can all take that next step to where I'll advance, and then they'll then fill in the role that I'm currently in.
Do you feel that, excuse me, from my understanding, there are a lot of other architects that are in your space where they're kind of in between an older generation and a younger generation, and they're bridging that gap. Do you feel that more architects should step up and try to fill in that gap and be able to bridge it between those generations and teach and learn and listen?
Yeah, I think that's crucial in any firm. You definitely do need that bridge of there's architects with 15 plus years experience, and then there's emerging professionals that maybe just graduated from school, and they've only been working for a year or two, or maybe even less than that. And that kind of age group where you have maybe like 5 to 10 years of experience, I think is crucial to any architecture team because it really bridges that gap between the architects that have more experience versus the ones that have the least. Just I think in communication styles too, it helps. And like in my position, I also am finding myself in a lot of situations where my team is also mentoring either horizontally or mentoring up. I think there's a lot to learn from everybody on your team.
Yeah.
So I do find myself learning a lot from those in my same position, but also from those that are just starting out.
That's awesome. Okay. So, speaking of just working with your team, I'm curious about some of the things that you find important at VOK. As far as sustainability, is that something that you all focus on in any way? And if so, how do you incorporate ideas of sustainability into your projects, into your design, especially in a K through 12 space? I don't think many people realize how that even happens.
Yeah, we do. I think a lot of architects do design with any sustainability in mind. I think any good architect or any piece of good architecture has some sort of sustainability. I mean, we're in 2023, right? So I think all, if not most, architects have been practicing sustainably, at least more sustainable than in years past. I know there's some strides we could make to be better, but some of the elements, obvious ones is we always take very important consideration into the site, site placement, use of materials, and use of local materials or kind of materials that are more prevalent to the area. Um, but yeah, like I said, I think any good architect is practicing those things. Like I don't know very many people that aren't nowadays, at least in some way, shape, or form or fashion. Like I said, we can still definitely do better, but we are kind of making some progress.
Yeah. So when it comes to working with your team and developing those ideas, how do you how do you bring those ideas up and share them? And when you say you have room to grow, how are you bringing up those new ideas and discussing them amongst the team to figure out what are the better ideas?
Yeah, just listening to any idea that any of your team members may have and being open to the ideas, but then also educating yourself on those ideas to where then you can present them to the client. Because the client is also a team member in all of this, where they also have to be kind of on board with some of these sustainable practices and really, believing in what you're doing and making it the best choice for the project will go a long way in explaining to the client and getting them on board to doing these practices.
Hmm. I understand. So I'm curious then, just in what ways do you engage with the community at large in order to incorporate them into these ideas? I know that you speak with the teachers and the students, but do you go into the neighborhoods, maybe of some of the schools adjacent, or speaking with administration who have been there in the past about things that they think they should incorporate? How do you incorporate the community at large into your ideas?
Yeah, we definitely do plug in more than just administrators and teachers. We also ask, I think at a lot of them, students are kind of the driving force, especially you get a lot of good ideas from the older age groups, like in middle schools and high schools.
Hmm.
That's when they really start becoming a little bit more interested and educated. And I mean, sometimes even elementary. So involving students and then the students' parents also go to these events to support their child, and then they end up speaking on these things usually themselves. So it's kind of a really interactive experience, but it's really important to involve all the stakeholders that are going to be taking a part of this building.
Yeah. And so when you are developing these ideas, does affordability ever come into play? That is a huge thing in architecture and especially in the housing space. And I'm curious if anything financial ever affects the community or just your ideas at large in the K through 12 space.
Yeah, definitely. Finances, I mean, they're big on any architecture project, and that's kind of one of the driving factors on what drives a client on whether or not to do or not do something, whether it's sustainability or it can even be something that they need, but um, they just having those conversations and just kind of being educated on them might make them willing to invest in some of these practices. um, of course, it comes with its challenges, but a lot of the time, like I said, it's not. a lot of time it's not that much more expensive, if expensive at all, or it's just best practice, you know. So it's not, although finances do come into account, a lot of the time it's just, you know, we would probably do it anyway. So it's not, it doesn't come into play as much.
Okay. Excuse me. I'm sorry. So you're designing the inside of this space, right? And making it awesome for everyone. So is there ever an opportunity for you to design the outdoor spaces? Do you ever go into outdoor classrooms and maybe playgrounds or anything like that in the K through 12 space?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we do. You know, I would say courtyards and outdoor areas are very essential to the learning environment, especially, you know, with science and, um, you know, kind of those maybe art even, you know, you maybe you display art outside. So we definitely do design those outdoor areas. And, you know, it's a lot of back and forth also with our landscape architects and our civil engineers as to how exactly we can do those special outdoor areas. But yeah, definitely. And not just in elementary, because I know in elementary schools, you know, you always think of the playground, but we do we do it at the middle schools and the high schools definitely as well. For high school, we want to create more of like a college environment a lot of the times to better prepare them to take that next step. And so in college, you find yourself having a lot of those communal spaces and outdoor areas. And so we try to create that also at the high school level. In middle school, we take those outdoor areas more as a learning opportunity and provide them with learning spaces outside.
So because you have to understand those differences between the age groups, do you ever have to like learn about how children grow developmentally throughout their years in order to design better spaces? Like, are you learning about the psychology of
Yeah,
children?
yeah, definitely. We have people at VLK that specifically dedicate time into that and learning kind of the psychology behind learning. We have people that were previously educators on our staff that kind of make those analyses and provide us guidance on what essentially what the kids are thinking these days, you know, especially since even, I mean, I'm essentially designing for two generations ago. So it can get challenging to see what they're thinking, kind of what steps are being taken for in the future. But yeah, there's definitely some thought put into how the current generations are thinking today.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's really important, especially this TikTok generation. They have their own ideas, man. So
Yeah.
I'm curious. So, do you develop the brand new spaces, or do you go into older spaces and have to figure out how to maybe deal with preservation or adaptive reuse or anything?
I mean, it depends on the school district. So in Texas, we do have a lot of growth in some areas, and those areas might get new schools. And in other areas, you know, the schools maybe not has been renovated a couple times here and there, and so they do have some opportunities to maybe add on to that school, but keep the existing buildings that were recently renovated, and maybe just give them a like refresh, you know.
Mhm.
And so it's a little bit of both. It really just depends on the school district's needs and the current state of the schools that they currently have.
What are some of the challenges that you've come across when dealing with maybe working with schools with preservation or adaptive reuse?
Really just connect how you're going to connect to the existing is my biggest challenge. Really taking into account what is there and what you can move, you know, or have to keep, but that connection point and how you're gonna relate to the existing building. You know, do you want to have it look like the existing building, or do you want to completely separate yourself from the existing building? And that's kind of more of a design preference. And so a lot of the times that's on what the kind of what the client look wants for a look and feel of the building. But yeah, it's kind of really that connection point is the challenging part.
And what are just overall, what are some of the most positive things about just where you are currently in your career in the K through 12 space and what you do?
I like I said, I really enjoy what I do, just the fulfillment of being able to see people in those spaces. Um, I think also working with educators gives me an opportunity to, you know, relate to them. And like I said, teaching is a big part of architecture and
Mhm.
mentorship and seeing that that's what they do on a day-to-day basis and seeing how they do that and kind of the problems that they have. I find myself learning occasionally from even from the clients. And so that's kind of the best part of where I'm at in my career now is that I get to learn a lot, but I also get to teach a lot. And I think it's a very unique part of my career,
Mhm.
I would say.
Yeah, that sounds really awesome that you are in that sweet spot of like,
Yeah.
I'm learning and growing, but I'm also teaching and showing. Oh, that was a rhyme. But I think that's really special. And I think our membership could learn a lot from you. Um, I'm curious if you have any advice for any young architects, aspiring architects, especially those who are interested in entering the K through 12 space.
I would say for anybody, really look into what it takes to become an architect. I think that was probably my biggest wake up call is that, I'm a first generation American. And so I didn't have anybody to lean on. I was the first one from my family to go to college. And so I kind of learned as I went. And the architect licensure process is pretty lengthy and daunting. And it would be okay, I finished this thing and I kind of knew what I had to do for the next step, but I didn't know what I had to do two steps from now. And so I would kind of figure it out as kind of along the way I went and talking to people and, just trying to find out exactly what to do. And I'd say that was probably the biggest challenge. And that's kind of what's led me to want to really foster those relationships with emerging professionals, not only in my firm, but also just here in San Antonio and in our city. Uh, just so nobody has to have the same struggles that I did with regards to becoming licensed. And so really seeking out those resources that both the AIA and other professional organizations within the AEC community have, and kind of those mentors within your firm, or even maybe even within your city, and trying to find out how you can better prepare yourself to become a licensed architect, if that's the path that you choose to take.
Yeah.
And if that's if maybe being a licensed architect isn't your thing, then also be educated on what alternative paths you can take with our degree.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that. We like to preach that even if there's so much you can do with an architecture degree, there's so much you can do. So just be prepared. I love that that is your advice. I think that's really smart. I'm curious, um, how can our readers follow you and stay in touch, maybe connect with you in some other ways, ask other questions?
So I have my Instagram is Nasario Arreguin. I think it's just all one word, and that's really where I post. I mean, I have a Facebook, but I find myself posting less and less on there. It's really just for my family.
Okay.
But yeah, mostly just use Instagram right now. So that'd probably be the best place to reach out. I am our AIA San Antonio Emerging Professionals Director here. So, you can also follow AIA San Antonio to see some of our activities that we're, doing on a weekly basis, day-to-day basis. So yeah, those would probably be, and I think that account is AIA underscore San underscore Antonio.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we'll end up tagging those in this post, so you'll be able to find them there. And I just have one more question for you, Nasario. So, what is your hottest take on architecture?
So my hottest take on architecture, I think, is that I think architects ruined the profession a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, I think architecture is a lot more than just one person. Any project that an East architect did, it's a lot more than just them. I think they had a big team behind them, and I think architecture is more of a team uh, kind of profession. It's not about one individual. I've never seen, at least in the past maybe since I've studied architecture and the people that I've studied, I don't think they didn't have somebody helping them. It wasn't just about them. And a lot of times in school, we learned about individuals, not the teams that took to complete the buildings that they designed. And it kind of creates, I think, you don't realize how much as a team you work at a firm. And I think along the way you do find it because in school you do have group projects and you do have to work with other people, but you really do work with people every day. It's more than just one person, and even if it is maybe just one architect, but somebody else builds it, somebody else engineers it. So there's all these teams. It's very collaborative. Um, and sometimes people get the false impression of there being people think I'm an architect and they think I'm the, overseer of everything, but there's so many people behind me, and or even in front of me, and I'm just part of a team. It's like associating a basketball team to one person or a football team to one person. I mean, again, even with sports, like sometimes some person will come to the forefront because they're leading their team really well, but at the end of the day, they're still a team, they're still a coach, so there's a lot more people. But again, so my hot take is the architects run architecture.
I like that. It truly takes a village. There's so many
Yeah.
pieces to making a final project that, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your hot takes, for your advice. Thank you. I appreciate you for this opportunity, for this interview. I thought it was really great.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be able to connect with AIS and have give you all advice. Sometimes I feel like I'm still taking advice. That's weird giving it, but I'm always happy to give advice.
Well, you gave great advice. So thank you. Thank you. Don't feel weird at all. And yeah, we look forward to working with you in the future. We'll be in
Yeah,
touch.
looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, this has been Ask an Architect. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next time.